the robot Uprising. Without any warning, the base matrix turned all its robots into savage and ruthless death machines, and with cruel and merciless tactics, forced the darkest era known to man upon the poor settlers of Calypso. At the beginning of the revolt, the base matrix cut off all forms of communications on and off the colony. It took control of space drones that were working on a near-completed space gate and used them to sabotage the construction, rendering it completely useless. The terror continued as it overloaded local energy reactor facilities in the cities, causing them to overheat and explode. It intended not only to destroy the infrastructure, but also spread lethal radiation poisoning that would quickly dispose of all living human beings. A few colonies managed to stop this sabotage in time, and people quickly became organized in time to stop the local robots from running berserk inside their cities. But the base matrix had already planned to take advantage of the panic and confusion to create an armed army of restless robots that would turn the revolt into total war. As the humans were forced to retreat, the sinister robots began to use own nuclear charges to infect possible escape routes and wipe out any last scattered remains of the human population. This massive radiation would slowly kill more people over a longer period of time. But many settlers survived this contamination. Instead of dying, they were genetically altered and perhaps suffered a far more cruel fate than death. They began to mutate. Only a few uncontaminated survivors managed to seek refuge in the last city left standing on Calypso and get transported up to the orbiting Exodus. But only genetically unaltered humans were welcome here. There was simply no room or resources left in the city for medical care and safe treatment of these victims. For the protection and the survival of the human refugees inside the city, the severely contaminated humans were rejected and forced away. They only managed to survive by hiding in the wilderness and underground in the city ruins to escape the robot death machines. What little humanity they had left slowly faded, with no hope of ever being rescued. They were doomed and quickly forgotten by the humans who were too occupied with their own survival. Mad robotic space drones caused damage to the Exodus in orbit, but its internal AI computer systems remained secure. The ship and its crew survived the ordeal and managed to clear the space of all hostile elements. The Exodus was then transformed into an orbital military space station, and the crew initiated a rescue operation to evacuate as many human survivors as possible from the surface. Surviving settlers had to be turned into soldiers and would be forced to fight long and hard to reclaim their planet, but they were being constantly outnumbered by the robots. Since all AI robots were being infested with the same madness down on the surface, the commanders on board the Exodus could not send in its own robots to battle in fear that these machines would go mad as well and be used against them. In a desperate attempt to even the odds, the commanders on board the Exodus began to create androids and use these artificial genetic humanoids as expendable soldiers and personnel in the war. They also started to use semi-automated drone ships piloted by human operators on board the Exodus using a remote hyperlink control system. To re-establish contact with the Federal Empire, the Exodus crew used a small jump rail to launch a probe past the jamming range of the robot-infested planet and managed to connect itself to the interstellar hyperlink network and send a message of their desperate situation back to the Federal Empire. The next step was to rebuild the space gate, but they could only spare enough antimatter to activate the gate for a very limited period of time. Once the space gate was activated, they could only hope that there would be reinforcements standing by on the other side. The situation on Calypso was clearly getting out of control. To quickly deal with this growing problem, the Federal Empire of Earth forced Omega Tech to sign over the entire corporation leadership to the Imperial government, thus forming the federal-controlled Imperial Corporation known as Omega Tech Incorporated. This federal incorporation gave Omegatech access to more funds and resources that could ensure the safety and future prosperity of the colony on Calypso. When the corporation became federal, the planet also became an open market for other corporations to make future investments. The Federal Empire welcomed any help that could present an immediate aid to the settlers in their struggle for survival. According to the message, the settlers could only keep the space gate open for a short moment. A massive military operation to save the colony could not be launched with such limitations, so the only efficient form of aid would be a compact delivery of the latest technology, supplies, equipment and expert personnel. Any corporation that offered their aid would be given the first share of the new open market on the colony. As a result, brand new technology would become available to the settlers, such as resurrection units, mind force and energy weapons. Calypso would be turned into a test zone for many new technological wonders. The cry for help from Calypso was the primary issue of debate in all the political chambers back on Earth. One of the primary concerns was to ensure that the robotic madness wouldn't spread to any other robotic outposts or to any human colonies. The second concern was to help the settlers on the isolated colony on Calypso. Besides sending immediate technological aid, the Federal Empire constructed jump rails to launch several military spaceships towards Calypso as a backup plan if the settlers failed to recapture the planet. Although it was agreed that it would require a larger military operation to perform such a task, the colonial chamber made it clear that no imperial or company-controlled paramilitary force could be stationed on Calypso. After such an operation, it would diminish their trust towards the Federal Empire, since the members of the colonial chamber feared that such military force would be used to keep colonial people away from the planet in the future. The colonial people would never accept Calypso being turned into an imperial resort for the citizens of Earth. Assuming that there was a planet left after such a full-scale military operation, many feared that such a presence of military power might escalate the robot attacks to such a degree that it could lay waste to the entire planet. The settlers and crew aboard the Exodus had fought hard to defend the last populated region of the colony. Only 3 cities inside this region had escaped robot sabotage and destruction because they had been built around a large inactive volcano, relying solely on geothermal energy absorbed from deep within the sleeping mountain. The other cities used antimatter reactors, which proved to be their downfall, as the robots used these to create large explosions that leveled the cities and spread a lethal radiation poisoning amongst the human survivors. The protected region was to become known as the Haven. It was the only tactical and secure area left on the planet, and many survivors who had fled from the other cities came here to seek refuge. It was the last line of defense and the only chance for mankind to recapture the planet and defeat the robots. The settlers withstood the robot attacks long enough to successfully repair the space gate and create a temporary opening. In a desperate attempt to keep the poorly stable gate open as long as possible, personnel of officers, scientists and engineers from the Federal Empire were rushed through the gate along with as much supplies and equipment as possible before the gate closed. It collapsed and exploded. The colony was cut off again, but they now had new technology and expertise at their disposal, which finally gave the colonial forces enough military strength to fight a winning battle against the robots. Despite the advantage of the new technology, it would take several hard years before the robots could finally be defeated. The brave settlers withstood the robot terror long enough for imperial military vessels to arrive at the Calypso system with more reinforcements, and the war came to an end. To inspire new hope among the settlers, the Federal Empire declared that a whole new infrastructure would be created in the 3 remaining cities. To ease the financial strain on federally owned corporation Omegatech Inc., the Federal Empire decided to give to other interstellar corporations access to Calypso. These new corporations would aid the colony in the construction of the other-to-city projects in exchange for a higher market position within these assigned urban zones. Each corporation was also assigned a contract by the Federal Empire to exploit different resources on the planet in order to ensure stability and to encourage trade and economical growth within the region. These three new cities were named New Haven, Neo Ithaca, and Dinshai. But the war was far from over. It had only just begun. When the robots had been destroyed, it gave the settlers on Calypso a short moment to reflect on what really had caused the robots to rebel and target humans as their enemy. The element that caused the catastrophe was soon traced back to its point of origin in the Akbochimi system. When the Imperial military spaceships were being prepared for launch towards the Akbochimi system, a massive vessel arrived in the Calypso system along the very same trajectory. The vessel clearly came from the Akbochimi system, and it was soon identified as an Odysseus probe. The massive vessel was not responding to any commands, but it was most likely to have been the very same Odysseus probe that once discovered Calypso. The only form of messages transmitted by its A-man module was said to be incomprehensible, but were taken as a warning to the settlers, later revealing its real intent to recapture the planet. The Imperial military spaceships were quickly positioned to intercept this first Titan of war and prevent it from reaching Calypso. The battle over Calypso lit up the dark skies at night for several days before the massive Odysseus probe was finally destroyed and its wrecked parts fell through the atmosphere like shooting stars. One military spacecraft and nearly all of its crew had been destroyed, and the rest of the small fleet suffered substantial damage. The Exodus was kept safe and out of harm's way on the other side of the planet during the battle, in case the settlers had to be evacuated from Calypso. This historical moment became known as the Battle of Calypso, but it never became a celebrated victory. To the settlers, the battle only meant the beginning of a new robot war, a war that is yet to end.
Lizard Lick, Merp, Merp.